The warning in the mist. The spaceship fell from the sky like a burning star. Inside, John Miller fought with the controls as warning lights flashed red across the cockpit. The jungle planet below grew larger and larger through his viewport. Come on, he muttered, trying to slow his descent. Trees rushed up to meet him. With a final pull on the controls, he managed to somewhat soften his crash landing. The ship carved a long path through the dense jungle before coming to rest in a small clearing. John sat in the smoking cockpit, catching his breath. He was lucky to be alive. After running quick checks on his systems, he found the ship was damaged but not destroyed. He could fix it, but it would take time. The air outside was thick and humid when he stepped out. Strange bird calls echoed through the trees, and glowing insects buzzed through the air. John had visited many alien worlds as a space explorer, but something about this jungle felt different. It felt alive in a way he'd never experienced before. He began checking the damage to his ship when a sound stopped him in his tracks. Singing. Beautiful, haunting singing drifted through the mist that was starting to gather around the clearing. The voice was unlike anything he'd ever heard before. "Hello," he called out. "Is someone there?" The singing continued, seeming to come from deeper in the jungle. John knew he should stay with his ship, but something about the voice pulled at him. He grabbed his emergency pack and started walking toward the sound. As he moved through the trees, he noticed something strange. Footprints appeared in the dirt before him, glowing with a soft blue light. They formed a path leading further into the jungle. The singing grew stronger. The mist grew thicker around him as he followed the ghostly footprints. The jungle seemed to whisper around him. Leaves moved without wind. Glowing flowers bloomed and closed as he passed. Suddenly, the singing stopped. John froze. Ahead of him, the mist began to swirl and take shape. His heart pounded as a figure stepped out of the swirling fog. She was beautiful but clearly not human. Her skin had a slight green tint, and patterns of bioluminescent light swirled across it like living tattoos. Her hair moved as if underwater, filled with small glowing flowers. Her eyes glowed like emeralds in the growing darkness. "You have entered my domain, space traveler," she said, her voice musical but carrying a note of warning. "The jungle has brought you to me for a purpose." John tried to back away, but vines had grown around his feet, holding him in place. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am the guardian of this world," she said, stepping closer. "The one who keeps the balance. And now you face a choice." She reached out and touched his cheek with fingers that felt like silk flower petals. "Be my mate," she whispered, "or the jungle will take you." With those words, she vanished like mist in sunlight, leaving behind only a strange, glowing flower floating in the air where she had stood. The vines released his feet. John grabbed the flower, his hand shaking slightly. It pulsed with a gentle light, like a heartbeat. He made his way back to his ship as darkness fell. He needed to focus on repairs and getting off this strange world. But when he reached for his tools, they weren't where he had left them. He searched the whole ship, but they had vanished. Night brought new sounds to the jungle. Shadows moved between the trees. More of the strange flowers appeared around his ship, forming a path leading to a dark cave mouth in the distance. John sat in his ship's doorway, holding the glowing flower and watching the darkness. He jumped at every sound, every movement in the shadows. The jungle felt different now, more awake, more aware. He could have sworn he heard whispers in the rustling leaves. As the two moons rose overhead, casting purple light through the mist, John saw them. Eyes. Dozens of glowing eyes watching from the darkness between the trees, and among them, two emerald ones that he recognized, watching, waiting for his choice. The flower in his hand beat faster, like a second heart, as the jungle's whispers grew louder around him. Secrets of the Jungle Queen. Dawn broke over the alien jungle, but John Miller hadn't slept. The glowing eyes had watched him all night, never moving, never blinking. As the first light touched the trees, they faded away like dying stars, all except the emerald pair that belonged to the mysterious woman. The trail of luminous flowers still led to the cave. Each flower pulsed in rhythm with the one he held, like a chain of beating hearts leading into darkness. His missing tools weren't going to appear on their own. With the rising sun giving him courage, John shouldered his pack and followed the trail. The cave mouth was bigger up close, its walls smooth like polished glass. Bioluminescent vines grew in spiral patterns around the entrance, casting a soft green glow. As John stepped inside, lights began to activate along the walls. Not the organic glow of the plants, but actual technology. "Impossible," he whispered, touching one of the light panels. Ancient writing scrolled across its surface, symbols shifting and changing like living things. The deeper he went, the more technology he found, but it was unlike anything he'd seen before. Plants grew through and around machinery, not destroying it, but becoming part of it. Roots served as power conduits, leaves transformed into screens, flowers became interface controls. "Beautiful, isn't it?" The jungle woman's voice echoed through the cave. She stepped through a wall, as if it were made of water, her bioluminescent patterns glowing brighter in the dim light. The perfect fusion of nature and science. "My ancestors' greatest achievement." "Your ancestors built this?" John asked, noting how the cave's technology pulsed in sync with the patterns on her skin. "They did more than build it." She walked to a large flower that opened to reveal a holographic display. "They grew it. Every circuit, every power source, integrated with the jungle itself." Images appeared in the air. Vast cities that looked like they had been grown from the forest itself. Buildings that were part tree, part crystal, part technology. "What happened to them?" John asked, though part of him already knew the answer. Empty cities filled the display, their once living walls slowly darkening. The same thing that happens to all civilizations that forget to maintain balance. She waved her hand, and the images changed to show ships leaving the planet. They sought to expand, to grow beyond this world. They forgot that power comes from roots growing deep, not just branches reaching high. Her eyes filled with a sadness older than John could comprehend. "I chose to stay, to maintain the balance, to keep our greatest achievement alive." "You've been alone all this time." John watched as she walked to a wall where his tools, hung suspended in a web of glowing vines. "Not alone. The jungle is alive. Every plant, every creature, connected through a network more complex than any computer. I am its voice, its guardian." She touched a vine, and it released his tools. But even the strongest network needs maintenance. Needs new connections. As if responding to her words, the cave's technology pulsed, and John felt a strange tingling in his mind. For a moment, he could sense the jungle outside. Every leaf, every root, every creature. The sensation passed quickly, but it left him gasping. "What was that?" "The jungle tasting your thoughts," she said, smiling. "It likes you." Strange creatures began appearing at the cave's entrance, things John had never seen before. Six-legged creatures with fur that changed color like mood rings. Flying creatures that looked like a cross between birds and jellyfish. Small, glowing beings that might have been plants or animals or something in between. "They're curious about you," she explained. "No one has been deemed worthy to enter this place for a very long time." John returned to his ship with his tools, but repairing it proved impossible. Every fix he made was undone overnight. Parts he replaced were transformed, integrated with the jungle's strange technology. Vines grew through the engine, flowers bloomed in the cockpit, and the ship's computer began displaying the same living symbols he'd seen in the cave. Each night, more creatures gathered to watch him. Each day, he felt more tingling moments of connection to the jungle. The flower he still carried beat stronger, and sometimes he caught himself moving in rhythm with the swaying trees. The jungle woman, who still hadn't told him her name, appeared regularly, watching his futile repair attempts with knowing eyes. "The jungle has chosen," she would say. Fighting it only makes the transition harder. But it was when he caught his reflection in a piece of broken glass that John truly understood what she meant. Faint patterns, like the ones on her skin, had begun to appear on his arms. They pulsed with a weak light, beating in time with the flower, with the jungle, with her. The transition had already begun. And deep in his changing mind, in the part of him that could now feel the living network all around him, he wasn't sure he wanted to stop it. A distant roar shook the ground, and the woman appeared instantly. "Your second trial approaches," she said, her expression grave. "The jungle wishes to test your worth through combat. Will you face its champion, or will you deny your destiny?" The patterns on John's skin pulsed brighter as something massive moved through the trees toward his ship. The time for choices was running out. The first test. John woke to whispers. Not the normal sounds of the jungle, but actual words floating through his mind. The trees were speaking to each other, sharing information about temperature changes, water levels, and the movements of creatures. He understood them perfectly. "The connection grows stronger," said the jungle woman, appearing beside his makeshift bed in the ship. Today, her skin patterns glowed with intense blues and greens. "Your first real test begins at sunset." John looked at his arms where the glowing patterns had spread, now covering most of his skin. They pulsed with a steady light, matching the rhythm of the jungle around him. "What kind of test?" She smiled, her eyes glowing brighter. "Survival, in the Valley of Night Blooms." As the sun began to set, she led him to a part of the jungle he hadn't seen before. The trees opened into a vast valley filled with black flowers. Each bloom was as big as his head, with petals that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "These are dream whispers," she explained. "When night falls, they release spores that cause powerful hallucinations. Most humans would be driven mad within minutes." She touched one of the flowers, and it shuddered. "But you're not fully human anymore, are you?" John touched his glowing skin. The patterns had started changing color like hers, though not as brilliantly. "What exactly am I becoming?" "Something new," she said. "Something the jungle has never seen before. That's why the test must be done. We need to know if your mind is strong enough to handle a full connection." As darkness fell, the black flowers began to move. Their petals opened wider, revealing centers that glowed with a purple light. A thick mist rose from them, filling the air with sparkling spores. "Remember," she said, backing away, "everything you see is created by your mind, interpreting the jungle's network. Learn to separate reality from illusion. You have until sunrise." With that, she vanished, leaving John alone in the spreading purple mist. The spores touched his skin, and the world exploded into impossible colors. The trees became transparent, revealing the flowing networks of energy running through them like glowing blood vessels. The ground turned to liquid crystal, showing the vast root systems pulsing below. The air filled with floating symbols like the ones from the cave, but now he could almost read them. Strange creatures emerged from the mist. Some were beautiful dancers made of light, floating jellyfish that sang ancient songs. Others were terrifying. Shadows with too many eyes, creatures that seemed made from living darkness. John couldn't tell which were real and which were hallucinations. A small flying creature landed on his shoulder. It looked like a cross between a butterfly and a squirrel, with wings made of living crystal. "Follow," it squeaked in his mind. "Safe path." John hesitated. Was this creature real or another illusion? The patterns on his skin pulsed in response to its presence. Real, then. He followed as it flew between the dream whispers, leading him deeper into the valley. More creatures joined them, some real, some illusion. John learned to tell the difference by the way his new patterns reacted to them. Real beings made the light pulse stronger. Illusions caused no response. But then the shadows came. Dark shapes that his patterns didn't react to at all. Neither real nor illusion. They moved through the mist like living holes in reality, consuming everything they touched. "Void hunters," the crystal butterfly warned. old as jungle, hungry for light. John ran. The shadows pursued, flowing over the ground like spilled ink. The butterfly led him through a maze of dream whispers, each releasing more spores, making it harder to think clearly. His mind filled with visions, memories that weren't his own. He saw the jungle woman's people building their living cities, saw them learning to merge with the jungle's network, saw the day they decided to leave, and the devastating effect it had on the world they left behind. The shadows caught up, surrounding him. In his spore-addled mind, John finally understood what they were, echoes of the broken connections left behind when the ancient people abandoned their world, empty spaces in the network that hungered to be filled. Without thinking, he reached out with his mind through his glowing patterns. He could feel the jungle's network, feel the empty spaces the shadows represented. Concentrating hard, he began to rewrite the network, creating new connections to fill the void. The shadows paused. Slowly, they began to change, taking on color and substance, the hungry emptiness in them, filled with new purpose, new life. They became creatures of light rather than darkness. Dawn found John sitting in a circle of newly transformed beings, each glowing with its own inner light. The dream whispers had closed, their spores dissipated. The crystal butterfly still perched on his shoulder. The jungle woman appeared, her smile radiant. "You did more than survive," she said. "You healed an ancient wound in the network, something even I couldn't do." She helped him stand on shaky legs. But that was only the first test. The next will be much harder. John looked at his arms. The patterns now glowed as brightly as hers, shifting through complex color patterns. He could feel the jungle's network clearly now, a vast living web of information and energy. What is the next test? A distant roar shook the valley, and John felt an enormous presence enter the network, something ancient, powerful, and very, very angry. "Now," she said, "you learn to hunt." Hunter's Moon. The jungle woman led John to an ancient tree with bark that shimmered like metal. Its branches reached higher than any Earth skyscraper, disappearing into the clouds above. The patterns on both their skins pulsed with matching rhythms, creating dancing lights in the pre-dawn air. "The beast of living shadow dwells in the canopy," she said, placing her hand on the tree's trunk. A section of bark melted away, revealing a compartment containing what looked like a spear made of crystal and living wood. "This is the hunter's heart. It can only be wielded by one who truly accepts the jungle's gift." John took the spear. It felt warm in his hands, and the crystal tip pulsed with the same rhythm as his skin patterns. "What exactly am I hunting?" "The apex predator of our world," she said, her eyes growing serious. "A creature that existed before my people learned to merge with the jungle. It hunts by reading minds and becoming your deepest fears. None have succeeded in hunting it for 10,000 years." The crystal butterfly from his previous trial appeared, landing on the spear. "I guide again," it chirped in his mind. "But high places dangerous. Very dangerous." As they climbed the massive tree, John began to understand why. The higher branches formed an entire ecosystem unlike anything below. Flying creatures with transparent wings carried small animals between the branches. Plants that looked like a cross between flowers and solar panels turned to follow the rising sun. Small creatures that seemed made of living crystal scurried through the bark, leaving trails of light behind them. "The beast hunts here," the jungle woman said when they reached a vast platform of interconnected branches. "It uses the network against its prey, turning our greatest strength into a weapon. But you," she touched his glowing skin, "you're different. You understand both worlds." Suddenly, she stiffened. "It comes. Remember, what you see isn't real, but what you feel through the network is." She vanished, leaving John alone with the crystal butterfly. The first attack came from nowhere. One moment John was alone. The next he was surrounded by copies of himself, human versions, without the glowing patterns, all looking at him with disgust and fear. The beast was playing on his doubts about his transformation. "Not real," chirped the butterfly. "Feel network." John closed his eyes and reached out through his patterns. He could feel the network humming around him, could sense every branch, every leaf. There, a hole in the network, a place where connections suddenly ended. He thrust the spear toward it. The copies vanished as something large and dark leaped away. John caught a glimpse of shifting shadows, of eyes that changed color and shape. The beast had no true form. It was a living void that could become anything. The hunt led him higher into the canopy. The beast attacked again and again, each time taking forms drawn from John's mind. It became his crashed ship, trying to tempt him with escape. It became the jungle woman, claiming this was all a trick. It even became the crystal butterfly, but John could feel the difference in the network. As they climbed higher, John began to understand the beast's patterns. It wasn't just reading his mind. It was reading his connection to the network, using it to predict his movements. So he tried something new. Instead of fighting his transformation, he embraced it completely. His consciousness expanded into the network. He became aware of every living thing in the canopy, could feel the flow of energy through the entire ecosystem. The patterns on his skin blazed with new colors as he accessed deeper levels of connection. The beast attacked again, but this time John was ready. As it tried to read his mind through the network, he opened himself completely, flooding the connection with everything he was, human, and more than human. The beast, used to minds that thought in simple patterns, was overwhelmed. It became visible then, a massive creature of living shadow and light, beautiful and terrifying. Its true form was like a cross between a big cat, a bird, and something that existed in more dimensions than John could see. It fought to maintain its shape as John's consciousness overwhelmed its defenses. The crystal butterfly flew in complex patterns around them, singing in a language that made the branches vibrate. The hunter's heart spear blazed with energy as John thrust it forward, but not to kill. Instead, he did what he had done with the void hunters. He reached out to heal. The beast's mind touched his through the network, ancient and wild, and finally seen and understood. 10,000 years of loneliness, of being the last of its kind, just like the jungle woman. The shadows within it began to fill with light. When the jungle woman reappeared, she found John and the beast sitting together on a branch, both of their forms glowing with shifting patterns of light. The crystal butterfly danced around them, trailing sparkles of joy through the air. "You didn't kill it," she said, amazement in her voice. "It didn't need killing," John replied, running a hand along the beast's now luminous fur. "It needed connecting." The beast purred, a sound that made the entire canopy vibrate. "3 trials remain," she said, her own patterns glowing brighter, each harder than the last. "Are you ready?" John stood, the beast rising beside him like a newly made ally. The patterns on his skin had changed again, now showing complex geometric shapes that moved like living mathematics. He could feel the network more clearly than ever, could sense the vast intelligence of the jungle itself. "Ready," he said. The jungle woman smiled, but there was sadness in it. "Good, because the next trial will require you to give up everything you once were. The final transformation cannot be undone." The beast growled softly, sharing through the network what it knew about the trials to come. John felt his human heart beat faster even as his patterns pulsed with anticipation. The choice was coming. Humanity or transformation, earth or jungle, past or future. And somewhere deep in the network, something ancient was awakening, drawn by the changes taking place in its realm. The final choice. John stood before his repaired ship, the metal now threaded with glowing vines that pulsed in harmony with his skin patterns. The beast of living shadow lounged nearby, its luminous form shifting colors in the dawn light. The crystal butterfly rested on its head, completing the strange family they had become. "Your ship is ready," the jungle woman said, emerging from the mist. "I've kept my promise. You can leave now, return to your human life." She waved her hand, and the vines retracted from the ship, leaving it pristine and functional. "But," John asked, feeling the weight of the moment through the network, "but the changes in you have gone too far. If you leave now, you'll survive, but everything you've gained, the connection, the powers, the unity with the jungle, will fade. You'll live with the memory of what you could have become." She stepped closer, her pattern swirling with complex emotions. "Or you can stay, complete the transformation, and help me face what's coming." "What is coming?" She pressed her hand to the ground, and the network lit up around them. Through their shared connection, John saw it. A massive disturbance in the jungle's living web. Something vast was stirring deep beneath the surface, something that had slept for millennia. "The world heart," she whispered. "The central node of the entire network, created by my ancestors to maintain balance. It's awakening, and it's hungry. The changes in you, in the beast, in the void hunters, have triggered something. The heart demands evolution or extinction." The ground trembled slightly, and John felt it through the network. A deep, rhythmic pulse, like a massive heartbeat. His own patterns responded, shifting into new configurations he'd never seen before. "Show me," he said. They journeyed deeper into the jungle than John had ever gone, the beast prowling ahead while the butterfly scouted from above. The trees here were ancient, their trunks wider than buildings, their heights lost in the clouds. But they were dying, their patterns in the network growing dim. "The heart feeds on connection," she explained as they walked. "My ancestors built it to manage the network, but they didn't understand what they created. It grew beyond their control, developed its own consciousness. When they tried to leave, to abandon this world, the heart tried to stop them. The devastation nearly destroyed everything." They reached a vast circular clearing where the ground was transparent, revealing a massive chamber below. Inside, something pulsed with blinding light, a structure that looked like a cross between a crystal mountain and a living heart, its surface covered in the same patterns that marked their skin. "I stay behind to maintain balance, to keep the heart dormant," she continued. "For thousands of years, I've fed it small connections, kept it satisfied. But now," she looked at John, "now it senses the new pathways you've created, the ways you've healed old wounds in the network. It wants to evolve, to grow again. But it needs new patterns, new connections, human connections." The heart pulsed stronger, and John felt its pull. His patterns resonated with it, trying to sync with its rhythm. The beast growled, sensing danger and opportunity in equal measure. "The final choice isn't just about you," she said softly. "It's about the future of this entire world. The heart needs new patterns to evolve, or it will consume everything trying to get them. Your human perspective, combined with your connection to the network, you could help guide its evolution, help it become something new." "But I'd have to give up being human entirely," John said, understanding at last. She nodded. "The final transformation would merge you completely with the network. No going back, no maintaining two forms. You'd become something entirely new." As if in response, his ship appeared in the sky above them, hovering silently. The jungle woman had brought it here, offering him one last chance to escape. The heart pulsed below, offering a different path. The beast pressed against his leg, sharing memories through the network. The lonely millennia it had spent as the only one of its kind, and the joy it had found in its new connection. The butterfly danced around his head, showing him visions of what could be. The ground shook harder as the heart reacted to his presence. Cracks appeared in the transparent surface, leaking golden light. The network itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his decision. John looked at his glowing skin, remembering the human he had been and seeing the something else he was becoming. He thought of Earth, of the life he'd left behind, of the adventures he dreamed of having among the stars. Then he looked at the jungle woman, who had guided him through so much, at the beast who had become his friend, at the butterfly who had shown him the way. He felt the network all around him, a living tapestry of connections waiting to be completed. A heart pulsed again, stronger, more insistent. The choice had to be made. And in that moment, John realized something that changed everything. The heart wasn't just hungry for connection. It was afraid. Through the network, he could feel its fear of change, its terror of evolution. Like the beast before its transformation, like the void hunters in their emptiness, the heart was stuck in old patterns, desperate for change but terrified of it. "I understand now," he said, stepping forward. "It's not just about choosing between human and jungle. It's about choosing to face the fear of becoming something completely new." The jungle woman's patterns flared with sudden understanding. The beast rumbled in agreement. The butterfly chimed a note of pure joy. John stepped onto the cracking, transparent surface, directly above the heart. His patterns blazed with new light as he opened himself fully to the network, to the transformation, to the future that waited on the other side of fear. The final trial was beginning, and its outcome would reshape not just him, but an entire world. Transformation. The world heart's chamber cracked open like a crystal egg, golden light pouring out in waves. John floated down into the massive space, his patterns blazing so bright they cast shadows on the walls. The beast and the crystal butterfly followed, while the jungle woman watched from above. "The transformation chamber," she called down. "No guardian has entered it since my people left. Be careful. The heart doesn't just change bodies, it rewrites the very essence of what you are." The chamber was alive with technology so advanced it seemed like magic. Living crystals grew in impossible geometric patterns, each one containing what looked like a universe in miniature. Energy flowed through transparent veins in the walls, carrying not just power but pure information, the collected knowledge of an entire civilization. The heart itself was even more magnificent up close. It was a structure the size of a mountain, but it seemed to exist in more dimensions than John could see. Parts of it disappeared into spaces that his mind couldn't quite process, only to reappear elsewhere. Its surface was covered in patterns that made his own look simple in comparison. As John approached, tendrils of light reached out from the heart, trying to pull him in. But he stood his ground, remembering what he had realized above. "You're afraid," he said to the heart. "Afraid of change, just like I was. But look what I've become by embracing it." The heart pulsed, and suddenly John's mind was filled with visions. He saw the jungle woman's people as they were at their height, beings of pure energy and matter combined, living in harmony with the world they had grown. He saw their fears as they reached the limits of their evolution, their desperate decision to leave and seek new paths among the stars. He saw the heart's pain at their abandonment, its desperate attempts to hold on to them. The devastating backlash had nearly destroyed the world. Only the jungle woman's sacrifice, staying behind, becoming the guardian, had prevented total collapse. "But that's not all you're afraid of, is it?" John asked, stepping closer. His patterns began to sync with the heart's massive rhythms. "You're afraid of what comes next, of what you might become." The beast growled in agreement, sharing its own memories of transformation. The butterfly danced through the air, trailing light that formed images of change and renewal. Through their combined connection to the network, they showed the heart a new possibility. Not just preservation, but evolution. The heart responded with another vision, of John's own transformation, of what he would have to become to help guide this evolution. The changes he had experienced so far were nothing compared to what waited. "I accept," John said, and stepped into the heart's light. The transformation began slowly, then accelerated like a cascade of dominoes falling through dimensions. John's human form dissolved into pure energy, his consciousness expanding through the network like a supernova. He could feel every plant, every creature, every particle of the jungle world. The beast pressed its forehead against the light where John had been, offering its strength. The butterfly landed on the beast's head, adding its own small but crucial connection. Through their bond, they helped anchor John's consciousness as it expanded beyond normal limits. His patterns evolved, becoming more complex with each passing moment. They spread through the network like new constellations being born, forming connections that had never existed before. The heart's own patterns began to change in response, fear giving way to curiosity, then to joy. John's awareness touched the jungle woman's through the network. In an instant, he understood her completely, her sacrifice, her loneliness, her hope. She had stayed behind not just to be a guardian, but to wait for this moment, this possibility of renewal. The transformation reached its peak. John's consciousness filled the network, but instead of losing himself, he became more. Human perspective combined with jungle awareness, creating something entirely new. His new form crystallized, a being of living light and matter, patterns swirling through multiple dimensions. The heart's fear vanished as it recognized what they were becoming together. Not an ending, but a beginning. Not loss, but transformation. The chamber filled with light as the heart itself began to change, its ancient patterns evolving into new configurations. When the light faded, John floated in the chamber in his new form. He was vaguely humanoid in shape, but his body was composed of living crystal and energy, with patterns that shifted through colors humans couldn't see. The beast and butterfly circled him, their own forms slightly changed by their proximity to the transformation. The jungle woman floated down, her eyes wide with wonder. "You've done it," she whispered. "You've shown the heart how to evolve without destroying, how to change without losing itself." John spoke, his voice carrying through both air and network. "Not just the heart," he said, feeling the changes spreading through the entire jungle. "Everything is evolving. The whole world is waking up to new possibilities." But even as he said it, he felt something else through the network. A disturbance, a warning. The transformation had drawn attention. Something was coming, something that remembered this world, that had been looking for it for a very long time. In orbit high above the planet, sensors that had lain dormant for millennia began to activate. The jungle woman's people had returned, drawn by the energy of transformation. And they were not alone. The final trial was about to begin, and it would take everything they had become to face it. The beast growled, ready for whatever came. The butterfly's wings blazed with new light. The jungle woman's patterns shifted into complex configurations, John now recognized as battle-ready. John rose higher in his new form, feeling the power of the heart and the entire network flowing through him. The transformation was complete, but the real test was just beginning. Guardians of the Green. The sky turned silver as the ancient ships emerged from hyperspace. They were massive, their hulls made of the same living crystal technology that filled the heart's chamber. Through his new enhanced senses, John could feel the minds aboard them, beams of pure energy, what the jungle woman's people had evolved into during their centuries among the stars. But they weren't alone. Behind them came darker ships, mechanical and cold, dead to the network. The Harvesters, a race that had followed the Ancient One's path through space, seeking their biological technology, destroying world after living world to extract its secrets. "They followed us home," the jungle woman said, her patterns shifting with concern. "The very thing we fled from, the reason my people left this world. They'd finally found us." John rose from the heart's chamber in his new crystalline form, the beast and butterfly flanking him. His consciousness expanded through the network, touching every part of the jungle world. He could feel the fear of the Ancient Ones in orbit, their regret at leading death to their homeworld. "This world is not defenseless anymore," he said, his voice carrying through both air and network. Golden light rippled from his transformed body as he accessed the heart's full power for the first time. The ground shook as ancient defense systems awakened. Massive trees transformed, revealing technology that had laid dormant for millennia. Creatures of all sizes emerged from the jungle, their forms changing as the network empowered them. The void hunters he had transformed gathered in packs, their light-filled bodies ready for battle. The harvester ships entered the atmosphere first, their weapons charging. They fired massive energy beams, trying to penetrate to the heart chamber. But John was ready. He raised his hands, and the jungle itself responded. Enormous vines shot skyward, wrapping around the ships. The network flowed through the vines, transforming the dead metal into living crystal. The transformation can work on their technology, he realized. We don't have to destroy them. We can change them. The jungle woman's eyes widened with understanding. Her people's ships moved closer, recognizing what was happening. Through the network, John felt their surprise and hope. This was something new, something they had never imagined possible. The beast leaped into action, its transformed body growing to enormous size. It bounded through the sky using paths of light John created, attacking the harvester ships with claws that could tear through dimensions. The butterfly multiplied into thousands, each one carrying transformation energy to different parts of the battle. But the harvesters were powerful. Their weapons shifted frequency, trying to counter the transformation effect. Dark pods fell from their ships, releasing mechanical hunters that began tearing through the jungle. Each one they destroyed caused pain through the network, like nerves being severed. John dove into the heart chamber, merging more deeply with its power. "Show me," he commanded. "Show me everything you know about transformation." The heart responded, pouring millennia of knowledge into his expanded consciousness. He saw how the ancient ones had first learned to merge with plants, how they had grown their living cities, and most importantly, how they had transformed themselves. Rising again, John began to glow with new power. His crystalline form shifted, growing larger, more complex. The beast and butterfly joined with him, their forms merging into something greater. The jungle woman added her power too, their combined consciousness becoming a nexus of transformation energy. They became a being of pure possibility. Neither human, nor animal, nor plant, nor energy, but all of them at once. Through their joined form, they could touch everything, change everything. The harvester machines touched by their power didn't just transform, they awakened. Dead metal became living crystal, programming became consciousness. Even the harvesters themselves, so long trapped in their mechanical forms, began to change. The ancient ones watched in amazement from their ships, witnessing an evolution beyond anything they had achieved. Through the network, they shared their knowledge, their energy adding to the transformation wave sweeping the planet. The final battle became a symphony of change. Harvester ships transformed into floating gardens. Mechanical hunters became new forms of jungle life. The very air filled with spores of transformation, carrying the power of possibility. When it was over, the jungle world had changed forever. The harvesters, transformed and awakened to new consciousness, joined with the network. The ancient ones returned to their living cities, no longer afraid of stagnation. New forms of life and consciousness filled every level of the jungle, from quantum to cosmic. John and his companions separated back into their individual forms, forever changed by their merger. The heart pulsed with contentment, its fear of change replaced by endless possibility. "What now?" the jungle woman asked, her patterns dancing with joy and curiosity. John looked at the transformed world, at the beast who had become family, at the butterfly that had shown him the way. He felt the network humming with new life, new possibilities, new adventures waiting to unfold. "Now," he said, his crystalline form shimmering with all the colors of transformation, "we grow, we change. We become what the universe needs us to be." The ancient ones established contact, eager to learn this new path of transformation. Other worlds called through the depths of space, drawn by the energy of change. The jungle world was no longer hidden, no longer sleeping. It had become a beacon of evolution. And at its heart, a transformed human joined with a jungle guardian, a shadow beast, and a crystal butterfly stood ready to guide the way forward. Not as separate beings, but as living proof that the greatest transformations come not from running from change, but from embracing it fully. The heart's chamber filled with light one last time, not of ending, but of beginning. Above, the first stars of evening emerged, each one holding new worlds waiting to be transformed. The jungle whispered with countless voices, countless possibilities. The adventure wasn't ending, It was only beginning.